Welcome back to Three and Out. Interesting weekend this past weekend for college football, but not interesting in a bad way. In a good way, I'd say, because we were talking a few minutes earlier. I don't think there's been a bad week in college football since maybe week two. Bad is, I feel like, kind of up to you to decide. But a lot of action from places that we haven't expected in the past few weeks. Potential for upsets in a couple games. Some teams escaped. We're going to go over it all and preview next week. But, Drew, how you doing?
Yeah, man. No, doing well. Had a good weekend. Father-in-law was in town celebrating his birthday, so, had a good dinner Friday night. And then spanked him in pickleball Saturday morning. He said he was going to subscribe to the channel and start watching, so, Doc, no disrespect, just gotta give the people what they want. And then, I went to B-Dubs for the noon slate because there was really only one game I cared about, and I knew it was going to be on. So no problems there. And then got back home in time for the Georgia game. And then, rode that off into the sunset. And then, just had a good weekend overall.
No, it was a good weekend in general and for college football. Just the two-man show today. Mr. White is elsewhere. He had other things to do.
He also
That's
had
all
a
right.
good weekend. He did a little traveling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. So, just Mr. Allen and I this evening call this the 2-minute drill, two-man coverage, whatever two-man football pun you want to come up with. That's what this segment is for this week. So we're going to go ahead and hop into Dogs of the Week first, as we always do, and then we're going to go into some recap content, talk about some of the bigger games of the weekend, some of those storylines, and then move into previewing this is back-to-back weeks in college football, the best back-to-back weeks I can remember, at least for a while. Let us know in the comments if you can think of one better, but in terms of quality matchups, you have Oregon and Ohio State in the Red River rivalry, and then this past week, and then this upcoming week, you have Texas and Georgia, and then Tennessee and Alabama. So some great top 10 matchups sandwiched in between each other in weeks. So a lot to look forward to, but we're going to go ahead and start it off with Dogs of the Week, as we always do. We can start with Noah's. He has phoned his in place for himself to get some love on this guy. I think, Drew, you probably have his stats up right now.
Yes, sir. So, we're going out west for this one. Not the school, but where the game was played. Going to give a shout out to Tyler Warren out of Penn State, wearing the all whites. Man had 17 receptions for 224 yards and a touchdown in what needed to be a comeback win over the USC Trojans. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to speak for Noah here, but this is not Noah's story. I had the under in this game. It was my lock. That was trashed with like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I personally did not know that Penn State knew how to score that many points. Drew Aller had not a great day, but a good day. He made some key plays when necessary. And, Tyler Warren was a key part of that and keeping the offense rolling and keeping Penn State in it and, helping with the comeback. So it's a pretty good dog of the week, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. And although Drew Aller did not have a perfect day, I will say, interceptions aside, seeing that kind of production from him through the air is encouraging if you're a Penn State fan, I think. Mm-hmm. Their identity on offense up until this point in the season has largely been keeping it on the ground for a good reason. One of the best running back tandems back there in the entire country, you could argue. So they were able to get it done through the air. And, if I'm USC, that's probably a game plan. I want Drew Aller to beat me with his arm through the air. And he did. So
he did. You game planned correctly. No disrespect to Drew Aller, but, we literally dedicated an entire video towards the end of the offseason breaking down Drew Aller spring tape.
It was like deep into the offseason. We were analyzing spring tape. It was a dark time, but yes. The tape, you can go back and find it. I might link it in the description if you really want to see it. But I think it was almost like a low lights cut, or either that or the game was just that bad. a lot of miscommunications and bad balls and stuff like that. But credit to him and James Franklin and Penn State. They're looking good this year, and if there's any year to do it, it's right now. So, but we'll touch more on that later. I feel like we'll keep that for the recap section. I can go ahead and hop into my dog real quick.
Go for it.
I have a main one, and then I have a supplementary one based on my main one. So I'm taking it out west actually this time. Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, the biggest matchup of the day. We'll touch on more specifics of the game a little later, but I will say Dylan Gabriel balled out. Not his best game statistically. Not bad. He went 23 for 34, 341 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. So you're pushing 350 through the air, 2 touchdowns. I would just say on the stage, huge stage. I know it was a home game, but there's a lot of people out there doubting Oregon, calling them fraudulent. I'm going to go ahead and raise my hand and say I was one of them. So, I think the way that they went out there and played and executed, played a pretty clean game from Dylan Gabriel and kind of steered that ship in the right direction, and they won the game. One of the most impressive wins of the season on the resume for Oregon now. And then supplementary speaking, I'm going Evan Stewart in this game. He had 7 receptions for 149 yards and a touchdown. For those at home that can't do quick math in their head, that is 21.3 yards per catch there. So great showing from Oregon. Like I said, we'll touch on that more later.
Yeah.
But my dog is Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah. Good deal. So I'm gonna take it to a game that I'm pretty sure that everybody was flipping back and forth on if you didn't have the second screen, just because of how the game was shaping up. But we're heading to Death Valley, where the Bayou Bengals took down the Rebs 29-26 in overtime. I feel like in that environment, on that stage, and with those implications that LSU is facing for the rest of the season, got to give it to Kyron Lacey, the wide receiver. The man had 5 receptions for 111 yards. That's averaging 22.2 yards a catch for 1 touchdown. And you're like, oh, well, Drew, 1 touchdown. That's not that impressive. Well, it was the walk-off touchdown in overtime to seal the victory and, more importantly, for LSU to cover.
That's all that matters.
Yeah,
really.
That's all that matters. Doesn't really make a difference whether they're undefeated in conference play or not. But no, I mean, really, really great game. I could very easily give this to Garrett Nussmeier, but as I've gone on record, I don't like making this a quarterback award. And he did have 2 picks, so yeah, but he still, 337 yards and 3 touchdowns for Garrett, but on 51 attempts, he only completed 22 of them. So I feel like it was just a high volume day for the LSU passing attack. Which is good because they only had a combined 84 rushing yards. So shout out to the Rebels front 7 there, but I understand that Garrett Nussmeier is one of the true gunslingers still left in college football. And, Kyron Lacey was on the receiving end of that and took care of business. So,
yeah, man. Hey,
great
I feel
games.
kind of similarly.
Yeah.
With Nussmeier to Aller. Obviously, Aller had a bit of a better performance, but, Nussmeier didn't get discouraged with the interceptions. A lot of volume. Just keep slinging it, man. You never know what will happen if you keep slinging it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did. So, you take away those interceptions, obviously a different ball game. You could say that in any game, but to not let that impact you. Yeah. And even with his completion percentage, it's easy to get in your head and get down on yourself as a quarterback when you make mistakes like that. But he let it roll off his back, and they came out in overtime. Huge win for LSU. A brutal blow to Ole Miss. Yeah. Jackson Dart said it himself, and I think it was the post-game presser. They got to win out.
They got to win out.
You got to be perfect from here on out. That's their only chance. To really do anything.
Yeah, and so. I think that this is a very obvious statement, but the loss to Kentucky at home is really coming back to bite them in the ass, because even if they win that game by a point, losing at LSU at night in overtime isn't that big of a blemish. And then
It's excusable.
It's excusable in a 12-team playoff format. You could easily still be in the top 10, even if you lose that game and lose to Georgia down the line. In a hypothetical world, you're a 2-loss team where those 2 are your only losses. Those are very excusable. There's still a path for you to get into the postseason, but yeah, you got to win out, like he said. So maybe not the rest of the country may not care about this game, but like it did have playoff implications one way or another.
Yeah.
Because LSU is still undefeated in conference play, and their postseason chances are still very much alive.
Very much.
So
it's completely different.
We'll probably touch on that later, but as you can tell, I'm chomping at the bit.
We love to talk ball. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap Dogs of the Week. So those are our Dogs of the Week. Let us know in the comments who you would nominate for this, who your Dog of the Week was, who balled out, in your opinion. There's a lot of good performances, a lot of good games this weekend, but those are our guys that we think deserved the shine after this weekend. Moving on, we're going to get straight into some recap content. Honestly, we can start with Ole Miss LSU. We were just talking about it. Let's keep the train rolling. We'll bounce around. Maybe save the better ones for last. So, were you saying, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah.
The future lies for both these teams? Because obviously, Ole Miss, they're both still in it. But if you're Ole Miss, you can't really afford to be. I don't think you can afford to be 9-3 even and make it to the playoff. At least with the SEC and how it is. Yep. And you're probably looking at least a few teams ending up at 10-2 at the end of the season.
Yep. I think, obviously, there's not a quota or a maximum for how many teams from one conference can make it in. But there's an unofficial maximum, I think. Because
only so many are getting ranked in the top 10, and
exactly.
I think that's just the truth of the matter with the other power conferences.
So because if you're looking down the line and you hypothetically have a 9-3 Ole Miss, with your losses being at Death Valley against Georgia, and then that really nasty one hosting Kentucky. It's just I don't think there's a world where you get in over even a 2-loss Big 12 runner-up or a 2-loss ACC runner-up, and once you get the first 4, then you get the group of 5 team, and that's already 5 teams. And then you've got the SEC runner-up. I mean, and you got probably the Big 12 runner-up and probably the Big 10 runner-up. So, I mean, you're already staring down the gauntlet of, 7 or 8 teams, not automatically getting in, but, pretty damn close. So that you're really fighting for the last 4 spots there, and, 3 losses is just not looking good. Because, like you said, about how many teams in the SEC even are probably going to end up with 2 losses. Looking at Alabama, looking at, maybe a Texas A&M situation if they lose to Texas last game of the season. So, but I mean, this game was very tough for Ole Miss, and as Jackson Dart has kind of gone viral for saying they have to win out. But great job for LSU. I don't want to completely talk about Ole Miss here because I feel like LSU does this almost every year, where they drop the season opener or they win it in close fashion, and then we get to the midpoint of the season and everybody's like, wait a minute. LSU is still very much in this hunt as long as they win the West. Or, well, in this case, they, win out in conference play, which would be really impressive.
Very impressive. I'm looking at their schedule right now. I'll run through it later, but it's a gauntlet.
Yeah, it's a gauntlet, but so I don't know. I'm saying all that to say this. This game, I'm just trying to let everybody out there that, isn't an SEC fan and doesn't understand the implications here. This was a huge game for both teams for the rest of their season. And shout out to the Tigers. I mean, one thing you got to do to be successful at this level, and especially in this league, you've got to take care of business at home, and they did.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I mean, huge shout out to them. I completely agree with what you said about them either losing early or having a close call early and just kind of getting written off. I mean, same thing happened this year. You lose early and then you turn around and it's the middle of October and you're in the top 10 and you have one loss. And I'm not saying their schedule from here on out is favorable. No. However, you still have a shot. So I'll run quickly through their schedule just to see their outlook. That you got Arkansas. You go to College Station. That is going to be a fantastic game, I think.
Yep.
And then you turn around the next week and you host Alabama. Now, at least you're hosting them. I also think that will be a very good game. And there's a bye week between A&M and Alabama, which is probably very much needed at that point.
Yep.
And then you go to Florida, to the Swamp. I'm telling you, I don't care how bad Florida is. I feel like there's some teams that they just have their number in the Swamp. I don't know about the series history with LSU, but I can at least say that for Tennessee. So none of these games are gimmies. And then you host Vanderbilt. And any other year, that's an automatic win. But Vanderbilt is good. Man. And then you end it with Oklahoma. Yeah. So, I mean, they very much control their own destiny still. A tough path out for them. And then, I mean, as far as the Ole Miss schedule goes, you kind of know it is what it is. They got to win out. Now, will they? I find it hard to believe that they will, just because you host Georgia. Now, obviously, you get the benefit of playing them at home. However, you need to shore up some things after that loss against Kentucky at home. It's not very... I don't know. We'll see about that. But then you even have to travel to Florida, and I feel like Florida is one of these teams this year. They may not go bowling, but I really feel like they're going to beat a couple teams they shouldn't. Yeah, they're and I think that's a prime spot for that. They're playing scrappy football.
Yeah, they're playing South Carolina ball down there in Gainesville.
Yeah, they're playing spoiler.
Yeah,
and I mean, hey, if I'm Billy Napier, those are the games I need to win to save my job.
Yes. Why do you think Beamer's
I go into
still
the
here?
AD's office and point at this game, said, hey, I can do it. Right?
If I win this game, I save my job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't count them out of any game that they're.
No. I mean, it's still Florida. I understand, it's a dumpster fire, but they have the athletes, they have the home field advantage that they need. I just think also very, very tangential. I think it's funny that LSU and Alabama both get byes before each other. And it's, Alabama's bye isn't before Tennessee, and LSU's bye isn't before they play Florida. It's always each other. I don't know. That's just always kind of been funny to me. But anyway, all right. I feel like we've talked about...
we can... Let's stay in the SEC. We're kind of talking about... So there's a couple matchups there, some near upsets we're going to gloss over real quick. We're kind of leading into it. I'll go ahead and mention Florida and Tennessee. I know, Drew, you didn't watch much of that one, but...
Not a minute.
And that's fine. And that's fine, because, I mean, from the outside looking in, who was going to watch that from the beginning? But I think this game tells me two things. The first is, we were saying earlier, Tennessee's offense is broken. And I don't know what they need to do to fix it, but if you look at the offenses that Josh Heupel has run in the past with Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker, this is not how they operate. Whether or not Nico, I guess, is not that prototype of the quarterback that can run it is remaining to be seen, but I feel like he was kind of there to do that, and I feel like he could, but, you're leaning on the ground game, you're not having success on the ground, and then you do what you always do in those, hurry up, get on the ball offenses. If you have a three and out, you're taking 30 seconds off the clock, and you're giving the ball back. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the coin, as we were saying earlier, I think Florida, they might not go bowling, but they're scrappy, and I do think they're going to beat a couple teams that they should not. They very much could have won this game. They shot themselves in the foot continuously. So we'll see. Mertz is out. He tore his ACL, so he'll be out for the rest of the season, and they'll have to play Lagway. Kind of forces Billy Napier's hand on that issue.
Which honestly might save his job.
Honestly, it might, because, my girlfriend goes to Florida, and we're watching the game together, and, Lagway comes in, and, the first play, he throws an interception, and it's like, oh, this guy sucks, and this and this and that, and I'm sitting there like, yeah, he might suck now, but, you got to get reps to get better in college football. You got to see live action. You can only do so much in practice. You got to see reps. Mm-hmm. And what they've been doing so far has been a little gimmicky, bringing him in situations where they think he could help not only with his arm, but with his legs. So now they're kind of forced to use him as an actual quarterback as the starter. So, like you said, Drew, if it works out, it could save his job.
Yep.
We'll see about that, though.
Yep. But, there's two games I want to talk about in the SEC. Number one, shout out to Vanderbilt. Taking care of business as double-digit dogs. Not only winning outright, but winning by a full touchdown. Really just controlled the pace of play as they have been doing the entire year, except against Georgia State, which is hilarious. But
and that's a good Kentucky team as well.
It's a stingy.
They're being overlooked by a lot.
Yeah.
Very stingy.
Very stingy.
Someone who's watched that Georgia game in its entirety.
And the Ole Miss game.
Keep away, man.
Yeah.
They'll get the ball and they'll possess it and they'll go score. And so that's not a win you should discount, especially, I didn't know they were double-digit dogs. I mean, they're going to start seeing some more favorable lines that keep playing like that.
They were 13.5-point underdogs.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. No, Pavia is having his insanity run.
Yeah. Just looking ahead, Vanderbilt does have the first game that they will actually have been favorites in for a while, and they're 26.5-point favorites against Ball State. I don't know about that. I think Vanderbilt is a very, ground and pound. Do they have explosive capabilities when you roll in that extra guy into the box? Yes. But, they run a glorified... No, they run a glorified triple option. And nothing against that. It obviously works against some teams. Puts you in situations where you have the ability to win. I'm just saying, don't jump on the Vanderbilt hype train now. You need to do it when they're double-digit dogs, not when they're double-digit favorites.
No, that's not what you want, because Vegas likes their money. And like you said, I think they have explosive playability, but it's not sustainable for a team like that. You got to scheme it, and it's the long game, and you run the offense so much, and then you can throw wrinkles in there. Just when they think they know what they're expecting you.
Yep. Look at Army and Navy, especially Navy. Look at both of those guys. They've been doing it for years. They got the coaches that know the system. They got the players that know the system, and now they're able to throw in wrinkles and expose defenses when they kind of lull them to sleep. But yeah, the other SEC game I wanted to talk about before we get into one of the other more exciting games of the day, the Red River. Going into this, just from like a spread perspective, everybody's like, oh, well, I don't know if Texas is going to cover. It's Red River. It's always close. Thinking back to last year when Oklahoma had Dylan Gabriel, walk it off. And
there's no quarterback play.
No.
Sorry.
No.
From Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It's not there.
Honestly, it would have been more fun if Arch had suited up on the other sideline and the two just fought it out. But that would be crazy if Arch transferred to Oklahoma. But anyway,
that'd be a big old fuck you.
Yeah.
Middle finger to Texas.
Could you imagine if Quinn stayed for another year and Arch was like, you know what, I'm transferring. He would.
Honestly, He won't stay another year. If he did stay another year, I find it hard to believe he wouldn't transfer.
Right. But yeah, Texas. Listen, I understand Oklahoma's offense is not good, but Oklahoma's defense is good, and Texas hung 34 on them, and they did not have their best day on offense. Texas is a wagon. Texas is a problem. I'm probably projecting a little bit here because I'm scared. We can get into that later, but yeah,
we will get into that later.
Yeah, shout out to the Horns. Took care of business in the rivalry game. So, I think you had one more you wanted to mention.
Yeah. I don't think we can gloss over Alabama, South Carolina. What happened in Tuscaloosa this past Saturday at noon, a noon kickoff.
Noon should have been a sleepy one.
Yeah, this is shades of Steve Spurrier, South Carolina football right here.
Yep.
This is a team that you should not lose to, that is going to almost beat you if they had a kicker. So, I can't lie, I was at a pumpkin patch for the first part of this game. It was one of those weekends, it's the fall time. It is what it is.
You got to pick and choose your battles there.
Yes, sir.
Especially
it was a great time.
Yeah, especially when the noon slate is that seemingly unawesome.
Yeah. Anyhow, Alabama, since that second half against Georgia, just hasn't really seemed to be able to piece it together. And I don't know exactly what it is, but it's weird to see.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Nick Saban is gone, and that is very obvious from watching them play football. Maybe it's because, maybe it's because their head coach won't put on a polo. He's wearing T-shirts and hoodies. At least that's the speculation from the fan base right now that isn't too happy with DeBoer. Obviously, you're taking over for Nick Saban. You're going to be underneath a microscope to the level where you're being analyzed what you're wearing on the sideline.
Yep.
It comes with the job. It comes with the territory. They won the game, and a win is a win in the SEC, but damn, it was an ugly win.
I mean, yeah, as someone who watched this game start to finish, I can probably answer your question about what South Carolina did that gave Alabama fits. And it was definitely South Carolina has arguably a top 5 pass rush in the nation, or at least they did this game, because they've got some really good defensive ends and edge rushers.
Dylan Stewart.
Yeah. That were just
emptied a clip.
Yeah. They were just able to expose the Alabama tackles and get to Jalen Milroe. And if they didn't get to him, they were, he at least knew they were there, and kind of keep him semi-contained, as much as you can. I mean, he still had 18 carries for 36 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, but he only averaged 2 yards a carry, which is crazy considering he had a 27-yard trot. But anyway, yeah, Lenora Sellers played well? Question mark? I don't know.
He's an enigma to me, honestly. I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
He's not bad. He's not a bad quarterback.
No. It's not bad.
It's so spotty.
It's just, I agree. And, yeah, South Carolina had every opportunity to win this game, simply just could not do it. Turnovers, just not being able to read blocks. I texted in the group chat earlier on in the game, in the either late second or late first quarter or early second quarter. I was like, if Lenora Sellers knew how to read a block, he would have 2 rushing touchdowns right now, because they had 2 trips inside, maybe not the red zone, but at least inside the 30, where he had either a scramble or a design run. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't know, just a wide receiver or a tight end blocking downfield, and on the other side of that DB was green grass for at least 10 or 15 yards, and just I don't know. But then again, I'm an armchair quarterback. It's easy to make that call on an 85-inch television at Buffalo Wild Wings. But anyway, fun game, great game. Would have been hilarious if the Alabama DB took a knee in the end zone, because I'm 90% sure that would have been a safety.
That's what I was thinking at first, and I was reading a lot online, and it's why chance it? Because, I think officially the rule is if you get carried into the end zone by your momentum, it's not a safety. But, why would you let the ref...
Yeah, don't put that in the ref's hands.
The interpretation of the ref decide that.
Yeah, no, he
made the right call. He took 2 or 3 steps before he went into the end zone. So there's a point where it's how far does your momentum really take you? Because if I'm a South Carolina fan, I'm begging for it. Oh, that's a safety, this and this and that. So there's no reason.
Imagine. Oh, my God. That would have been awesome.
That would have been awesome. But, no, it was a smart play. He ran it out pretty far.
Yeah, I was like,
I would have taken it 5-10 yards and slid down, but whatever.
100%.
There's not really a real difference at the end of the day. But Alabama, let me pull up their schedule.
I got it.
Because you got it?
Yep.
What are they looking at?
So obviously they head to Knoxville this weekend, and then they host Missouri. Wow. Yeah, they've got a fucking gauntlet with
3 straight.
Thank God they have a bye week from their perspective. But they head to Knoxville this week, and then they host Missouri, and then they have a bye, and then they head to Death Valley. I mean, literally the only stadium they're missing on this schedule is Kyle Field, because they are heading
Yeah.
to two of the largest stadiums in the conference, two of the rowdiest environments in the conference, especially when this team comes to town.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I don't care, how good or bad Tennessee and LSU really are at any given time. You're talking about Death Valley and Neyland within the span of 3 weeks. That is pretty insane.
Yeah, they better have the speakers at the practice facility bumping. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and I mean, with how Alabama was played, those are two very losable games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I'm Tennessee, this game is circled. I mean, and who's to say that LSU will still have one loss when they play? But even then, it's like you're fighting for your life here, really.
Yeah.
You're fighting. I mean, you could take one more loss and technically still be in it, but you don't control your own destiny. You leave it out of your hands. You're definitely out of the conference championship talk.
Yep.
There's a lot of games with playoff implications.
Yep. But
and we're in week 7?
Yeah. Especially if LSU beats Texas A&M. If LSU beats Texas A&M next weekend, well, obviously they got to play Arkansas first, but you know what I mean. If they beat Texas A&M and then they get a week off to host Alabama,
huge.
I
mean, that's a playoff game.
Yeah.
It's a play-in game.
Yeah, like I know LSU fans don't really need a reason to hate Alabama, but if the implication is if you win out, you're in the conference championship game, crazy. So
that's pretty insane.
So we spent a lot of time in the SEC.
We need to shine a light on a couple. I'm thinking 2 more games. I think we're on the same page. A couple Big Ten games.
Mm-hmm.
We can start with Penn State USC.
Yep.
Penn State wins in overtime. Drew Aller shows the nation that he actually can throw the football forwards. I'm kidding for the most part, but he is beating the allegations that he just, I think he's best at his handing off the ball. No, he balled out. He had a couple interceptions, right? I don't remember the stat line exactly. He threw a couple picks. However, he still had a good day. And I said it in the other video, in our Dogs of the Week. So if you have not seen that, go and watch it. I'll link it in the bio because I think this is coming out after it. But if you're USC, you game planned correctly, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Up until this point, Penn State, all they've really had to do, their identity has been running the ball. They've have one of the best running back tandems in the whole nation. So they're playing to their strengths. And if I'm USC coming into this game, I'm gonna make Drew Aller beat me with his arm and beat me by throwing the football, and that is what he did. So I would like to give him his flowers. He had a hell of a performance, a gritty performance from Penn State, and obviously USC isn't the best team, but they're not terrible.
No.
And I feel like there's a lot of teams that they could beat that they probably shouldn't, or they probably wouldn't be even favored against.
Mm-hmm.
But I think honestly for a James Franklin Penn State team, that's a big win. Yeah. And that's a game in a lot of other circumstances in the past that I think that they do not win. So I think that's big in taking this first step to trying to assert themselves at a higher spot in their conference.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. Especially with Michigan seemingly taking a step back to their pre-Harbaugh days. But no, I 100% agree. I think in years past, I don't care how good USC is or is not, on the road, being down by 14, a non-Saquon Barkley-led Penn State football team does not come back from a 14-point deficit. I'm sorry. That's just not how they're wired. That is not how it works, especially on the road. They showed a lot of grit. I mean, it was good. As someone who had the under, I was upset. However, as someone who enjoys college football, I was very happy for them, to come down or to come out of halftime being down 20-6, and then just have the third quarter that they did to get them right back into it. They outscored USC 14-3, and then got it all buttoned up in the fourth quarter, and then heading into overtime took care of business. It's good for them. I don't really have beef with Penn State other than the fact that they have been excessively mid for years past. And but yeah,
He has a beef with mediocrity.
I do.
Complacent. It makes me angry as a college football fan. I lived through it with Mark Richt at Georgia.
Yeah.
Great guy, just.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my biggest comp with James Franklin is Mark Richt, and that's not even an insult.
That's not an insult because
he's a great man, a great coach.
Yep.
Just couldn't get there.
Mark Richt is easily a top 10 coach in Georgia football history, and I feel like that is a compliment. Absolutely. He is arguably a top 5 coach in Georgia football history.
I would go as far as to say that.
Yeah, I would say that, but I'm not going to go digging through the archives and see who our coach was in 1807.
Band for band, when you play World War II era Georgia coaches, who stacks up.
Yeah.
But to me, in my heart, he's top 5.
Yeah. So, James Franklin, if you're watching this, you're a good person, probably. We just need you to take the extra step. I'm kidding. We have no beef with you. You're doing great things. 3-0 the conference, baby.
Yeah. So. No, I was happy to see them win. I mean, they're very much alive. Mm-hmm. The Big Ten is going to be very interesting down the stretch. A few very big players. So I was going to roll that into Ohio State, Oregon. Do you have any other comments about that game?
Not about that game. I feel like it'd be good if we end with Ohio State, Oregon. So before we move on,
Oh yeah, you got anybody else?
I mean, just gonna gloss over for sure. I mean, because did I watch this game? No, but shout out to Illinois for taking care of business in overtime against Purdue, winning 50-49.
Shootout.
Yeah, shootout. Also, speaking of shootouts, shout out to the Iowa offense for putting up 40 points against Washington.
That's unheard of.
Yeah,
from an Iowa offense.
Dude, the over in the Iowa game, I think, has either hit every time this year or every time except for one. So they are having a hell of a time over there. The only problem with the Big Ten this week is that Rutgers lost 42-7 to Wisconsin. But I mean,
that's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. And then I feel like I'm trying to run down the slate here. Were there any games in the Big 12 that were good other than the Colorado-Kansas State game? Not really. I mean,
no. I wouldn't
really
say so.
BYU
kind of a down day for the Big 12.
Took care of business. Yeah, I'm just going to run through the...
Ashton Jeanty did his thing.
Yeah, I'm running through the ACC real quick. I mean, the Clemson-Wake Forest game was on at the same time as the Alabama game, but, it was never really on. Georgia Tech beat North Carolina in a barn burner, 41-34.
Oh, yeah, almost last-second touchdown, like a 50-yard run.
Yeah. Pitt beat Cal. Syracuse beat the poverty franchise that is NC State. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, we can definitely move on to the game of the week. I think we've went around the country enough. I feel like we spent 30 minutes on the SEC, but hey,
we did. That's all good. That's our backyard.
Meat and potatoes.
Yep. What we know, but we like talking all kinds of college football. So taking it back over to the Big Ten to wrap things up, the biggest game of the day, one of the biggest games of the entire season, playoff implications, conference championship implications. Oregon hosts Ohio State and wins in a last-second mental error from a quarterback who is very experienced. That's my headline. Back-to-back weeks where we're seeing quarterbacks run,
when they
keep the ball, not throw it, when the clock is hit zeros.
Yeah.
So pretty baffling. I understand it from Nico, if you don't know what I'm talking about. Nico last week against, when they lost to Arkansas. They had a shot to sling it to the end zone. Mm-hmm. It was 20 yards away. And obviously you lost track of time, runs with the ball out of bounds, clock kick zeros, ball game. Very similar with Will Howard. In my opinion, a little less excusable just because, I'd hazard to say he's a veteran. He's had playing time elsewhere. It's not a mistake you can make in that situation. No. And I'm not saying that's why they lost the game, but, obviously it's going to be a big talking point when, you could have had another chance for yourself. Yeah. You're in field goal range. I mean, they were kind of bordering field goal range. It was weird there that last drive. They kind of got pushed back. They kind of ended up in no man's land a little bit.
If he completes,
weird spot, but
if he completes like a check down pass that gets 7 yards and gets out of bounds immediately, I'd say they were in field goal range. But or at least hey, we need to give our kid a shot to boot this one.
Yeah. Either leave yourself a chance to let your kicker go out there and try it, or draw up your best, score from 40 yards away play, whether that's just a Hail Mary or a hook and ladder or some kind of bullshit.
Yeah. And I feel bad. You kind of... Okay, it's not all bad for Will Howard. I mean, he still went 28 for 35 for 326 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, and he also had 9 carries for 13 yards and a rushing touchdown.
Not a bad day.
Not a bad day at all, but just, you're remembered for how you finish, and especially at the quarterback position, that is the truth. Just to confirm here, so they were on the 38-yard line. So that would have been a 48. That only would have been a 55-yard field goal. No?
What yard line? Say that again.
38.
38 plus 10 for the end zone plus 7 for the...
Yeah.
That's 55.
That's 55. So any forward progress where you get the
shot.
Yeah. Any forward progress where you get the ball out of bounds is a field goal attempt in your back pocket. So, I don't know what... Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the kicker was hurt. I don't know. But...
I mean, honestly, with college kickers nowadays, it's kind of shaky. That might have not been in his range. But, I don't know, man. You're a D1 kicker at Ohio State. You got to be able to drive the ball 55 yards. At least be able to. I'm sure maybe you have the leg, maybe not the accuracy. I don't know what the situation was. But, nonetheless...
But I mean,
pretty unexcusable to end the game that way without at least a combined, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to kick a field goal, we're going to take one last heave at it. It's kind of discouraging there at the end. But like I'm saying, not pinning it on him whatsoever. Not a bad performance, I will say. A performance like that beats almost every other team in the country, most likely.
Yep.
Except the team you just played. So.
Yep. Well, the problem is,
it's a tough way to go out.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Will Howard's performance on that last play kind of overshadows the offensive pass interference that was committed by Jeremiah Smith that took them from the 28-yard line to the 43. That's tough. That's
you can't
tough.
have that.
Nope. So, listen, Will, we're going to give you a little bit... Well, I am. I'm going to give you a little bit of leniency here, because to mentally have to switch up from saying, oh, we're in field goal range, all I've got to do is see if we can get, inside the 10 to make this even easier, and handing the ball off because we have a timeout in our back pocket, to going, holy shit, we're out of timeouts. We are now running the hurry-up offense, no huddle. We are calling plays at the line. We need to go. That's a pretty big shift. But you are supposed to be a veteran quarterback. But also, Dan Lanning, shout out to him. The 10-second runoff was genius. That was a Bill Belichick-esque move by throwing the 12th man on the field to, cause a little chaos there at the end. Good for him. Great game.
Amen.
All in all.
Rules junkie. He knew the situation, and that's part of being a great head coach is having those situational cues and being able to kind of do something that's almost kind of a little bit of a loophole where it's this works in our favor even though we're being penalized.
Yep.
So
you mean
very very heads up.
You mean Ryan Day got out coached? Crazy.
He's never gotten out coached.
What?
Never.
No,
Mr.
never.
Born on Third has never been out coached.
No.
No, I mean the narrative continues to build for Ryan Day. It's tough.
Yeah.
You gotta win games like that.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're on the road. Fortunately for Ohio State, the remaining schedule isn't it's not easy.
It's not easy, but historically
you go to Happy
speaking,
Valley.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's see the big ones. Go to Happy Valley.
Dear James Franklin, if there is ever a year, I feel like we say this every year, but for real this time.
This is really the year. This is really it.
You have the playbook to beat Ohio State. Just do what Oregon did. I know we're asking Drew Aller to beat Dylan Gabriel, but he's proven he can throw the ball forward. Let him do it again. But
he's going to have to play the game of his career for them to beat Ohio State. But, I mean, it's not out of the question. Ohio State goes on the road to Happy Valley.
Yep.
And then the rest of the way, you host Michigan, final game of the year.
Yep.
Rivalry. I don't really see too much in that, but you host Indiana the week before that. And watch out. The Hoosiers are undefeated.
They are.
So, I mean, the Big Ten isn't necessarily a cakewalk.
No. But I mean, looking at Oregon's schedule, this was pretty much their playoff game to get into the playoff.
Yeah, that's favorable. That's really favorable.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they go to Purdue, but this is a 1-5 Purdue, not exactly spelling spoiler makers. Then they host Illinois, who seems to be riding the hot hand, and then they go to the Big House, and then they host Maryland, and then they go to the Bounce House up in Wisconsin, not UCF, because apparently I have to distinguish the difference. And then, they host Washington at the end of the year. So, but for all intents and purposes, this was a playoff game for them.
Absolutely. And I mean, you drop one more game, you're still most likely in that conference championship. I can't see them dropping more than one game with that remaining schedule. Yeah. Obviously, you go to the Big House in Michigan, but that is not what it used to be.
No, just ask
with
Texas.
How they're playing this year.
Yeah.
So, Oregon has put themselves in a very, very favorable spot. Like you said, Drew, shout out to Dan Lanning. Young head coach, gaining experience, looking good while doing it. I'm happy for him, and they have cemented themselves firmly in the front of the pack in the Big Ten. Yep. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
Right there behind Indiana.
Yes, sir. I love that story. No, I mean, I love things like that where it's like, they're so undefeated. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
I haven't seen Indiana play like that since Michael Penix.
Yeah.
For anybody who remembers his Indiana days.
What was that, like 9 years ago?
Honestly, at this point, it might have been. You're probably, if you round up, you're probably not that far off.
Yeah.
Genuinely, which scares me. But anyways, I think that's going to wrap our recap. Let us know in the comments what surprised you most about this weekend. What you think the outlook of these teams will be moving forward. There's a lot up in the air for the SEC. We talked about that a lot. And then Big Ten is kind of more of a clear picture, but you still have, Oregon. Ohio State's not out of the mix either. Penn State's right there in it. So who knows? Maybe it's Penn State's year. But anyways, thanks for watching our recap. And we're going to move on. Was there anything we're going to get to between before preview for the upcoming week?
I think we were going to give it like 5 or 10 minutes just looking at like the conference standings, just to kind of gloss over that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can do that.
To just further cement how wide open everything is still.
Yeah, we can, and that's a good transition because I kind of talked about the SEC and the Big Ten outlook moving forward. So, we're kind of approaching mid-season now, and some pictures for the conferences are starting to form, starting to make some sense. However, there's still a lot of players out there, especially in the Southeastern Conference. We can go ahead and start there. Drew, if you have those standings up to read.
Of course. So, this is just for clarification. These are conference standings. These are not AP poll or CFP. If we had the CFP standings, we would not be on this show. We would be somewhere else. We'd probably be on ESPN. But
yeah, weeks early.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
That's right.
We're time travelers.
But anyway, to what I feel like has been a lot of people's surprise so far. To be fair, it's only 6 games into the season, but the team out of Texas sitting atop the SEC is coming out of Kyle field. College Station, your Texas A&M Aggies, ranked number 14th in the nation, are sitting atop the conference at 3-0. They do not, I don't know, it kind of looked like an ugly loss there for a minute against Notre Dame, especially how the game went down. But they have righted the ship as far as conference play goes, and they are at the top. Now, obviously, right behind them are the number 1 ranked Texas Longhorns, sitting at 2-0. And then right behind them are the Bayou Bengals, also sitting at 2-0 after coming off of that impressive win over Ole Miss. And then once you get beyond that, then you get down to your one-loss teams, which include the 3-1 Georgia Bulldogs, 2-1 Arkansas, 2-1 Vandy, 2-1 Alabama, 2-1 Tennessee, 1-1 Missouri. And then you get to the teams that have to win out: Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Florida, and that's
Florida even.
Yeah, and that's to even have a shot.
Yeah,
but I would probably draw the line at Ole Miss. Let's be honest.
Realistically, yes.
Yeah, realistically, because no offense to OU and Florida, but
they're not winning out. It's not going to happen.
No. And then the bottom feeders include a scrappy South Carolina, which I really feel bad for. A scrappy Kentucky, who, out of the 1-win SEC teams, they have the best win by far.
Yeah.
And then under the basement, with the key thrown away, Auburn and Mississippi State. So
yeah.
I don't know. We don't really have a format planned out for this, but
no, we can just kind of.
Sorry.
We can kind of run through it real quick. Now you're good.
Yeah. My beautiful wife just got home, and she just got a haircut today, so she looks a lot like Jennifer Aniston. Big smile. That's exactly what the doctor ordered. But anyway, now I figured we could just go down. We don't have to go through all of them, but at least the undefeateds, yeah. I would like to go through their remaining schedule and see how that looks. So Texas A&M sat on the couch this weekend after coming off that pretty big upset against Missouri. They take on Mississippi State, and then they host LSU, and then they head to South Carolina. And I'm just going to keep it conference games here. And then they head to Jordan-Hare, and then the big game they have circled is when they host Texas around Thanksgiving. So, thoughts there, Mr. Nash?
The shocking thing here is there's a world, and a world with a decent chance that happens that A&M wins out.
Correct.
And I'm not really kidding.
Correct.
Because if you look at their remaining games, their biggest games are LSU and Texas, and they're both at home. I think at the very least they split those, honestly. But I mean, you're talking they went out. They're undefeated in the SEC. They are a lock for the SEC championship. And not a lot of people have I heard really talking about that. I feel like it's flown under a lot of radars because there is a lot of college football to play. They look dominant against Missouri. They had the week off this past week. We'll see if they can keep that pace. But if they do keep that pace, I mean, their only loss could be at the end of the season to Texas. I mean, you host LSU. LSU's a good team. They, beat Ole Miss in overtime. They're scrappy. They'll hang with you. But, you go into College Station for that game. I don't know, man. They are right there in it, which is kind of crazy to think about. And they can make it to where nobody has a say. And, you went out, you're in.
Yep.
So
the crazy thing is they could lose to Texas and turn around and play Texas a week later.
They very well could. Because if Texas makes it through, we'll go through their schedule, but Texas makes it through Georgia, they're sitting pretty.
Yeah, if Texas is undefeated in conference play going into if both teams are undefeated in conference play going into College Station, or hell, even if let's just operate under that assumption. Yeah, that will most likely be a rematch. Well, maybe not most likely, but it could very well be possible. We don't have to. We tried to do the hypothetical thing. It does not work.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It gets torn apart in the next weekend, so it is what it is. But I'll roll that into Texas's schedule real quick.
Good deal.
We touched on, obviously, they're playing Georgia this week. Biggest game on the remainder of their schedule. But if you look at the remaining schedule after that, I mean, you go to Vanderbilt, which is surprisingly a juggernaut at this point in the season. Vanderbilt's going to be the dog there, so dangerous place to be in for Texas. But they take care of business at Vanderbilt after that. I mean, you host Florida, you go to Arkansas, you host Kentucky, you end it with A&M. Yeah. Right, so you have 2 ranked games left on your schedule, and if you beat Georgia, the only other roadblock is A&M. Yep. So even if you split those, you're a pretty good look for the SEC championship. So 2 teams from Texas who are in the driver's seat, really. Yep. I mean, they control their own destiny in terms of if they're going to make it to the SEC championship. So, hats off to them. They have done what they needed to do, and with A&M, obviously it's kind of that formula where if you want to lose, you just go ahead and get that loss out of the way, especially if it's a non-conference loss.
Yep. I have
you learn from it and you bounce back. So, props to them.
I have a hypothetical for you. If you are on the college football playoff committee in this hypothetical world where Texas A&M stays undefeated until they host Texas, and let's just say they lose to Texas. However, the rest of the conference is shaken out to where a one conference loss, Texas A&M still makes it the conference championship game. If they lose to Texas back-to-back weeks in close games, do they make the playoff as a 3-loss team?
I mean, that's a good point, because at this point you're being punished for playing in the SEC championship.
Correct.
It comes back to that.
In this hypothetical, you have a 2-loss. You have a 2-loss UGA. Let's operate under that hypothetical. You have a 2-loss UGA, and you have a 2-loss Alabama waiting in the wings. And
I mean, they're not making it over one of those teams. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. It won't be fair, I don't think. And then that kind of comes into play where it's like, you're being punished essentially for making the conference championship. That's just a tough spot. But it could happen, and that's a really good catch, because I hadn't even thought about that. Because in my mind, I'm thinking they're undefeated, but they're undefeated in the conference play. So, that would be a really tough situation.
I think there's a world where the committee understands the situation, and they're still the SEC runner-up. And
I mean, I think they could sneak in on the back end.
That could be a fun conversation for later if that does look like it might happen down the road.
Let's give it a few weeks. On that one,
or maybe a few months.
More like
All right, so moving on to LSU, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, and there is this giant roadblock between LSU and Texas A&M here in a couple of weeks. But LSU, honestly, I would say, I don't know, I would rather be in Texas A&M's position than LSU's position, because the LSU Texas A&M game is at Texas A&M. The good thing is that if LSU does drop that game, they do host Alabama. And then from then on out, if they can get through the first part of November, the rest of their schedule is not that difficult. They do also host Vanderbilt, second to last game of the season. But if they can get through Texas A&M and LSU, they're going to be sitting very pretty in conference play. It's funny how they're in 2 very similar situations.
Yes, I agree, and it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I feel like we're primed to there's going to be a bunch of teams in the SEC that finish 10-2, maybe even a few 11-1 scenarios.
Yep.
Because looking at the remainder of their schedule, there's the 2 big games that they could lose. And even if you split that, I don't know, man. That it's pretty favorable, and they're another team where you lose early and you bounce back. It's not a conference game. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters, but in the grand scheme of things, not as much.
I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine if both Texas A&M and LSU won those opening week games? I mean, I don't know if we'd be having a different conversation. I think the conversation would be, I don't know. I think LSU could probably drop to Texas A&M and Alabama close and probably still make the playoff. But having a real crooked letter in the loss column being the number 3 is not a good look for anybody unless you're a conference champion, which I don't know if that is even possible anymore in today's college football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. Yeah. And
yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know, man. Yeah, and then moving on to the one-loss teams, obviously UGA, they've come up a couple of times talking about the previous teams, just because they do play Texas this week. I don't know. We don't have to talk about this one too much. I feel like
on that path.
Yeah, I mean, listen. You got to win this week. If you don't win this week, you're on the outside looking in as far as the conference standings go. It is what it is. And then if you lose this week, then you're in the same position that Ole Miss is in. You got to win out. The good thing is, I feel like if we do lose this week, there's a much higher probability of Georgia winning out than Ole Miss, hopefully.
Agreed.
Hopefully, I agree. Hopefully.
Yeah, massive game against you hit the nail on the head. Massive game against Texas. Not a must-win, but you really needed to be able to control your own destiny moving forward. If you lose it, you can't really do that other than winning out and hoping things fall your way. But yeah, you lose this one, you can pretty much kiss the SEC championship goodbye. With how things are looking as of right now, you need quite a bit of help. Mm-hmm. And having losses that Alabama and Texas on your schedule, 2 of the teams that are going to be slated to make a run for the SEC championship, will not help you one bit. So, that's really the nitty-gritty of it for Georgia. I mean, biggest game of the season coming up for the rest of the way out. You host Tennessee, you go to Ole Miss. Those are 2 winnable games. So even if you lose to Texas, you could still win out and make the playoff. But it's all in front of you, and far from the easiest remaining schedule.
Yeah.
For these one-loss teams, you still can't write off Tennessee even at home. You can't write off Ole Miss. These are SEC teams that will play well and will beat you if you let them and make too many mistakes. That's really that really is what it is from a Georgia fan perspective, at least.
Yeah. And it's like everybody that's not named Texas A&M, or LSU. Their backs are against the wall, and they're going to play like it.
They're going to have to. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, the SEC is kind of loaded right now with teams at the top or the upper tier of it. I mean, you got a lot of one-loss teams in that upper echelon that are fighting for that spot, which is what's going to make this upcoming weekend, so special. I think is. Desperation is going to start to show.
Yep, and then there's Arkansas. They are.
They're technically right behind Tennessee in the standings. So.
Yep. I mean, that will probably no longer be the case after they play LSU. But hey, you never know what happens. Because they should be Mississippi State after that, and they're probably going to lose to Ole Miss. They're probably going to lose to Texas, and they're probably going to lose to Missouri. But you don't know until you play the games. I think Arkansas is in a pretty good spot for bowl eligibility, which I think if you would have told an Arkansas fan at the beginning of the season, like, hey, bowl eligibility is not that bad, and they would agree with you.
No, they were moments away from firing Sam Pittman, I feel like.
Yeah. So... But
I mean, not bad at all for that program. And then you have kind of the middling teams here, I mean, Vanderbilt, you went out. Yeah. Who knows? But
hey, man.
Aside from that, aside from that, you move into the teams that you got to win out, really. Yep. Missouri is not as much. I mean, obviously, they only have the one loss right now, so they need to bounce back.
Yeah. Which they
can.
In
a good kind of way. They can. They're not a bad team.
I mean, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've got 6 straight SEC games. So the season's not over. It's just you have a giant hurdle in going to Bryant-Denny. Which, hey, South Carolina just proved apparently ain't that hard. Unless you ask Georgia.
Unless you're playing there at night and you are Georgia and you spot them 28 points. Then it's a little difficult.
But, honestly... Okay, let's be serious for a second. If Missouri can lick their wounds and get off the mat and can get the team turned around and get them to buy back in, they play Auburn this week. They host Auburn. So if they can beat Auburn like a drum, then you focus on Alabama. And then if you get past Alabama, man, I mean, you're hosting Oklahoma. Yeah, you head to South Carolina, but how much momentum is South Carolina going to have at that point? Then you go to Mississippi State, and then you host Arkansas. I mean, I don't know. If I'm Missouri, there's still a little bit of hope in there. But
yeah, very much.
Yeah.
So, but,
have we already talked about Alabama's
competition? Schedule? I think we did. Or did we?
I don't think we did. Unless you...
I guess we glossed over them. Well, if we did, apologies, you're going to hear it again.
This is why we need Noah. Keep us on being the third party on here.
Yeah. So, sorry if this is a repeat. I'm not going to edit it out because I don't care enough. But, so you host Tennessee this weekend, obviously.
Go to Tennessee.
And then, you go to Tennessee. I think we talked about this earlier in another video, I think.
I believe so.
But I'm gonna run through it again. You go to Tennessee this weekend, obviously huge matchup. Tough stretch in the next few weeks, and then you host Missouri, good football team, and then you have a bye week, and then you travel to Death Valley. So you have to, in the span of 3 weeks, go to Knoxville, and then go to Death Valley. Two of the best stadiums in the SEC, the country even. Tough stretch for Alabama. And if they don't get things turned around,
it could be
not looking so hot.
It could get ugly fast. I don't know, man. And if we've learned anything about the Iron Bowl, it doesn't matter. Like, I know with rivalry games, it's so cheesy where it's like, oh, throw the records out the window, throw the
Auburn is so bad this year.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Yeah. So I mean, if they can, they get through this 3-week stretch, they should be chilling. But anyway, so, I mean, and then Ole Miss, I think we've already touched on them, but just to guarantee that we did, their big thing is Georgia. I mean, they host Georgia, so it's not impossible. Honestly, not that bad of a schedule outside of Georgia because, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi State. Not gimmies, but definitely not the upper tier of the conference. I mean, genuinely, if you don't lose to Kentucky, Ole Miss is sitting in a pretty good spot midway through the season. But they did, so.
Yeah. No, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but a lot of interesting scenarios out there.
Yep.
I'm cool to just wrap this and say this is our mid-season check-in for the SEC.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we have a lot more to offer in the SEC than the Big Ten. We can talk about that more another week. I think we're going to do like an official mid-season check-in maybe next week or the week after. Maybe do some tier lists, some, Heisman watches, maybe a playoff bracket. We're gonna get into the content, but let us know in the comments how you think the SEC is going to play out for the rest of the season. Wide open, a lot of players, a lot of unexpected players who are going under the radar at this current moment to make a way for themselves in this new SEC format. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out the rest of this season.
Yeah.
Moving on, we're going to get into some preview for this upcoming weekend. So, Drew, I don't know if you have any games that you have your eye on outside of the two obvious ones that we want to run down real quick before we get into the big matchups, or if we just want to hop straight in.
I mean, not really. I mean, I feel like we've already kind of beat the SEC to death.
We beat it to a pulp, which is fine, because it's interesting to look at, I think, and the way it's going to play out is going to be very interesting.
Listen, we have an obvious bias to the SEC, and arguably it is the deepest conference with the highest ceiling. How about that? Because I would argue
it's hard to argue that.
Yeah, because the argument can be made, the Big 12 is the deepest conference where the teams are the most equal. I would argue that is definitely could be true. I don't have all the stats and figures in front of me, but
top to bottom maybe. Like the floor is higher, but the SEC, there's not as much of a upper tier than everybody else. It's kind of more uniform in a way where there's not really too much of a drop off. But
Yes.
the SEC definitely has the biggest upside
Yes.
in college football.
Yes, I agree.
And the biggest upper tier.
I agree. So,
and we grew up with it, and we love watching it. But we love all football, though.
yeah, we do. I mean, there's something poetic about turning the game on, Friday night and just watching Arizona State and Utah, just for the love of the game. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Absolutely,
it's beautiful.
Love
But
it.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm trying to look at other conferences, and I mean Clemson, Virginia, Miami, Louisville. I mean, I don't know, Nebraska, Indiana, Army, East Carolina. I mean, there's nothing else really jumping off the page except for maybe Michigan and Illinois. But like, we know who the players in the Big Ten are. No disrespect to the Fighting Illini. I think my biggest question mark so far is Navy going to cover the 17 against Charlotte. Probably. Not the lock of the week, but probably.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just get straight into it then, honestly, at this point.
Go for it.
Okay. We're going to leave Georgia, Texas for a second, because obviously we are going to have some things to say about that.
I'm going to cry. But yeah.
We're going to do some on-air therapy. Just talking out loud. So stay tuned for that. However, you're going to have to wait a little longer on it because we're going to start. Alabama travels to Tennessee, the biggest game for the rest of the way out for arguably both of these teams. And, I mean, you need a win. Both teams need a win. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. You both have a bad loss, a blemish on your resume, and another one, you're one loss away from being completely out of playoff contention, period. Mm-hmm. So if you want to have any kind of sustained chance to make the SEC championship after this game, it's pretty vital that you go ahead and get a win here. So I can go ahead and give my initial thoughts on this game. Tennessee has been very different this season than what I had expected from them. Their offense is a bit more predicated on the run game than I had anticipated.
Big word.
Yeah. I'm pulling out the dictionary for this one. But Nico obviously has shown his youth and his inexperience at quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback, but he makes those mental errors. And Alabama has been, ever since they, gave up that lead to Georgia in the second half, let them come back, ultimately won the game, have not really looked the same as they did in that first half against Georgia, haven't shown that same dominance, have let teams hang around and almost beat them in 2 consecutive weeks with Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Ultimately, though, in this one, I think I'm erring more on the side of Alabama just because they have Jalen Milroe, and he can do what he does. And that Alabama offense, when they're on, their ability to generate explosive plays is quite insane.
Yeah.
I will say Tennessee, though, on the flip side, on the other side of the football, they have been playing good defense. I will give them that.
Correct.
They've had a good defensive unit, a front seven led by James Pierce Jr., one of the best edge rushers in this draft class. So they have been solid as well. However, I don't know if I see Tennessee coming out of this one.
Yep.
I mean, I think, it'll be a close game. I'm not sure if the spread is out yet or what that looks like. I'm sure Drew will mention that. But, this is going to be a dogfight from two teams who are nearing desperation mode.
Yep. Absolutely. No, man, I mean, I agree with everything that you said. I think it's hilarious that I've become the line guy.
Stats guy. The betting line guy.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I do live in a state where it's legal. And I have access to more than one book. But
yeah, it helps.
Yeah. So, I don't make it my entire personality, but for as far as value being brought to this podcast or channel or whatever you want to call it, that is where I've found myself. Because in the past, I've been the vibes guy, and that did not, apparently vibes don't win football games, or at least what I'm told. But all that to be said,
unfortunately.
Yeah. All that being said, from what I'm looking at, it looks like Alabama is hovering around a 2.5-point favorite in Neyland, which I think is crazy. Also, by the way, sorry, flashback to earlier part of this video where I didn't mention that I picked up South Carolina plus 21.5 live. I felt like a gambling genius, and but
Yeah, that's a great live bet.
Great live bet. Like, those are where the vibes come into play because everything statistics wise said, oh, Alabama's going to take off and blow this game open. But I don't know. You feel it in your bones.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to go with the gut feeling.
Exactly, and that might be what I do here. Obviously, I'm going to try to keep as close an eye on this one as I can. I will be not only attending, but I am in a wedding this weekend. However, the festivities will have died down by the time the Georgia game comes around, which is by far my preference. So forgive me if next week I will not have much to say on this game. All that being,
You'll be good, bro. Just go watch the Wheels highlights. Just get you covered.
There we go. But all that being said, as far as like the preview for this game, I do agree with you. I think that the Tennessee offense is not exactly what we thought they were. However, I think the Tennessee defense, especially with that pass rush, has the ability to keep Milroe contained. You can't stop him. You can just hope to contain him. And I think that we saw that against South Carolina. Where South Carolina was able to get a push up front on the defensive side of the ball, collapse the pocket a little bit more than, even the Georgia front seven did, and affect Milroe.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what you have to do here if you're going to succeed in this game. Tennessee has something that South Carolina did not. They have 110,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs, also trying to affect Milroe and this Alabama offense. So I think that's the matchup that's going to determine the outcome of this game, because Tennessee has proven that they aren't as, like, in these large stages, they're not the most electric offense and high-powered offense, but they can still move the ball. Kind of beat you up with the run game, and then hopefully Nico can be prepared mentally and physically to hurt you a little bit with his arm. But I think that the Tennessee defense is really going to have to play their best ball.
They are, but you make a great point. I mean, the formula to beating Alabama and containing Jalen Milroe does exist.
Yep. Yeah, and honestly,
you're not gonna completely snuff him out.
No,
he's gonna have an impact.
Yep.
You limit him.
Yep.
And there is film on how to do that out there in multiple games. The second half of the Georgia game.
Yes.
The Vanderbilt game.
Yes.
The South Carolina. They couldn't get it done, but they did what they needed to have a chance.
Yeah, I think you genuinely take like the baby of all nine quarters of football. Not 9 quarters. 10 quarters of football that
there you go.
That you just mentioned, and see how Georgia was able to exploit that secondary and get the points on the board. How was Vanderbilt able to play keep away and just absolutely churn the clock and limit Alabama's offense? Obviously, in the Vanderbilt game, the turnovers really set Alabama behind, and just the way that if you can get a turnover early, I think you follow the Vanderbilt tape almost to a T, because if you can keep Miller off the field, that's the best way to limit him.
Absolutely.
However, with the strengths of this Tennessee team, I think you look more into the South Carolina film and see what they did well and what worked well. So I think
I would agree. And I mean, I think Tennessee will kind of take a Kentucky-esque approach to how they played against Georgia. Not completely, but you got to play keep away against this guy.
Yep.
You really do. And I think Tennessee's offense kind of lends itself to that, where if you can have success on the ground, get a push up front from your O-line against their front seven, you can control the tempo of the game, have long sustained drives, take some time off the clock and score and keep it away out of Milroe's hands. And that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to win the time of possession battle. They're going to have to force at least a couple of turnovers. At least one. You got to have some kind of
would be good.
Game-changing play. You got to make some. There needs to be a turnover for Tennessee to win. I will say, you got to generate something, and have an opportunity to go even further up while still playing keep away. And I think genuinely that they can do it. They with how this team is built this year, because unlike any other iteration of this hypo offense, you're not really winning shootouts with this version of the team, which is fine. You just got to play accordingly. So I think they will have the formula. I lean a little Alabama, but with how they've been playing since that second half against Georgia, I wouldn't be surprised if either of these teams won.
I mean, there's no reason, if you're Tennessee, as long as you are still within a touchdown of this game, there is no reason to snap the ball with more than 10 seconds left on the play clock. Like, that's how extreme it needs to be. Every first down needs to be another at least 2.5 minutes that Alabama is not on the field offensively. All right. That's enough about the third Saturday in October, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we have shared our opinions there. Let us know in the comments who you have in this matchup. We'll leave it at that. I lean Alabama. However, I want good ball. That's all I really want at the end of the day. And like I said before, these are two teams that are in desperation mode, so expect a dogfight out on the field. Moving on to the biggest game of the day, College game day. The Dogs travel to Austin, Texas to play the Longhorns in the biggest game remaining on Georgia's schedule. Obviously, the rest of the way is not easy, but this is their first and biggest test that they have to get through to be able to make it to the conference championship, the playoff, whatever they want to make it to at the end of the road. So looking back at this past weekend, obviously Texas did what they did against Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. They looked dominant on both sides of the football, and Georgia on the other side of that coin pulled out to, I believe it was a 24-point lead against Mississippi State at home, and proceeded to let their foot off the gas on defense, got gashed, held on for a 10-point victory. Now, I will preface this by saying, if you didn't watch the game, as a Georgia fan, there was no point in the game where I really felt concerned that we were going to lose. I think we controlled the game for the most part. However, there were moments where, you saw things that, in my head, was like, if we play like this and make these mistakes against Texas, we are not making it out. And I still feel that way. And Georgia has a lot of preparing to do. They cannot start slow against Texas. It's just the fact of the matter. If you start slow against good teams, you see what happened against Alabama. You don't get away with it. You beat the Kentuckys of the world, which, are good teams, but you can out-athlete them. But you don't bring your A game and you get out-coached against Alabama and Texas, you're not out-athleting shit. Because they got just as many 5-stars on that side of the ball. So I think this is obviously a very pivotal game for Georgia. If they want to control their destiny the rest of the way, they need to win out, but first win this game against Texas. I think they very well could win this game. However, Texas has looked nothing but dominant and given people no reason to think that they will falter in this game. So we are obviously two Georgia fans, two Georgia alumni. If you haven't watched our videos before, that's who we are. Trying to take more of an unbiased stance here because I'm genuinely worried, I will say. Go ahead and put it out there. I am worried for this game because if Georgia does not play to the level that we come to expect from Kirby Smart these past few years and make mistakes, missed tackles, poor execution, poor communication like they have these past few games, they're not going to win.
If we don't play well, this could get ugly.
Yeah. And they're going to pour it on.
Yeah.
Because, I would, too.
Yeah.
Resume building, obviously, if you went out, you're fine. But, Texas has looked dominant, and I don't think they'll shy away from flexing their muscles a little bit. Sark is not the one to do that.
No,
So
no. I mean, it does not matter. I mean, at this point, it does not really matter who the starting quarterback is. Sark is in his bag.
mhm,
I mean, just
he is.
the play calling. They have obviously, outside of that Mississippi State game, in which I believe they still won by multiple scores. I don't
I think
think
it was
they didn't
like
cover, but I mean, they still won 35-13.
yeah,
Yeah. So Sark is in his bag. The fewest amount of points they've scored all season is 31, and that was against Michigan. And anybody who watched that game knew Texas took the foot off the gas and was just cruising in the second half. But, yeah, when you're averaging, let's see, 52, 31, 56, 51, 35, and 34, yeah, they're averaging somewhere in the mid-40s as far as points per game. Yeah, they're in their bag. They are balling. They are a wagon. It is a problem. They're averaging 43.2 points a game.
good lord.
So all that to be said, I am worried. I think any logical Georgia fan is worried. Now, you could make the argument, well, Texas hasn't really played anybody of this caliber of competition yet, which I would agree. Looking at their schedule, Colorado State, Michigan, like I already mentioned, UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma. Colorado. I mean, anybody else on this list doesn't really matter outside of Michigan, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma. Michigan is a shell of themselves. Mississippi State, even though they did just keep it close with Georgia, they also lost to Toledo by 30 points. And Oklahoma does not have an offense that can complete a forward pass. So that is the only thing about Texas. They have looked unstoppable, but the competition is a little questionable. And also, you could make the argument as a Georgia fan who defies all reason, saying that we kept it close against Mississippi State because maybe we were in a look-ahead spot. And, maybe we didn't spend all 4 days of practice prepping for Mississippi State with this game on the horizon, which, if you'll ask Kirby, he'll be like, no, that's impossible. We treat every opponent equal, no matter what their name is or who's on the other sideline, which we all know is bullshit. But anyway, all that to be said, this is bar none the biggest game of the day. This is not quite a playoff game because I feel like even with a loss, either team still has their destiny in front of them just because these are two titans in the college football world. Obviously, Texas has the upper hand here without having a loss on the schedule. But I feel like Georgia, with what ended up being a close loss at Alabama, and let's just say hypothetically the game does not go how we want it to, that's two quality losses in a 12-team playoff world. I think we'll still be okay. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to plan for that, but as a Georgia fan who has emotions, I'm pulling a film.
Already feeling them.
Yeah. I'm pulling a film stock. I may or may not be pre-coping.
Yeah, valid.
So
that's valid. It's hard not to when you see the lapses in this football team, the glaring
holes,
mistakes, and holes in this team. It's undeniable, really, as a fan. It's something that we haven't seen in a few years, where it's, you may have some weak spots, but overall the execution is there. You're well disciplined. You play good football.
Yep.
There's just been some bad football that's been played by this team.
Correct.
There's no denying that. Can Georgia win the game? Absolutely, I think they can. They have it in them. Like you said, Texas, up until this point, is a little less tested, but you can't really fault them for that. They have won the games that they have played how they should win them, and that is no small feat to them.
Yep.
So they've done what they needed to do up until this point and put themselves in an excellent position to where you, if you lose this game, you're still in a good spot with the remaining schedule that they have.
Yep. I
don't know if I want to pick this game because I might have to pick Texas, and I don't want to do that on air. They are a three. I don't know if you said it, Drew. I'm gonna say it again if you did. Texas is a 3.5 point favorite.
Correct.
At home, rightfully so. I expected them to be the favorite in this scenario. And then if you're into the ESPN analytics, if that's your thing, Texas is a 76.2% chance to win this game.
Yep.
Take that how you will, but dogs have their backs up against the wall. There's no doubt about that. They gotta get up for this game.
Yep.
And if there's one thing that Kirby Smart can do, in my opinion, is to get up for a game.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to believe that the Alabama game was because it was Alabama. And I don't think that's all of it, but I honestly, it's hard to sit here and say it wasn't part of it.
Yeah.
And maybe in the back of your head you knew you could lose that one and still be okay. Obviously, that's not something you want to think about. But now you have in the front of your mind, we cannot lose this game.
Correct.
And it becomes more of a desperation thing where the pressure is at an all-time high for this football game. If you want a chance at the conference championship, if you want a chance to control your own destiny, this is where you need to play your best football.
Yep. I mean, this is. I'll be completely honest. This is the first time in a long time that I have going into a game that I have had any doubt in Kirby Smart's ability to be a better coach than the guy on the other side. And the Alabama game is the key reason for that. I feel like we got outcoached in that game. I mean, anytime you
at least in the first half, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like both teams coming off a bye, and you come out and you get 28-0'd.
Inexcusable
to start the game off. Like we said that in the in the recap in so many words. We said that was inexcusable. So that's where the seed got planted, and like I said, Sark has been in his bag, and I have not seen anything on the Georgia side that has made me feel great since that Alabama game.
Honestly, I agree. I mean, Georgia has beaten since they've beaten Auburn and Mississippi State in back-to-back weeks.
Yep.
Back-to-back games. As a Georgia fan, I will say neither of those games, at any point in time, I thought we were going to lose. However, there were still just mistakes in execution, mistakes in communication, mistakes in just simple fundamentals, tackling, having communication between quarterbacks and wide receivers on routes, catching the ball, even up front with the O-line. There's been a lot of question marks with the offensive line, and you have Tate Ratledge out for at least a few more weeks. There's a few guys on this offensive line that have not gotten as many reps. Not to say that they're not, good players and can't perform well in games, but this is a big stage for a lot of these guys. I mean, it's next man up. We need somebody to step up. Georgia needs somebody to step up in a big way if they want to win this football game, which I think that is very well within the realm of possibility. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to give a pick for this one. I will just leave it as a Georgia fan. I am a little worried. I'm not going to lie to you. But I really can't deal with a blowout. If they go in there, Georgia goes in there and lays an egg like they did against Alabama and spots them, however many points. I'm just hoping to see a complete game.
Correct. From
this Georgia team.
Correct.
And if I'm Texas, I'm feeling good in my ability to maybe disrupt that. I mean, obviously, there's film. First half against Alabama. Not to say that Georgia will play that bad, but
no.
Texas looks like a juggernaut, and they have a chance to even further prove and cement that this upcoming week in their own backyard. They've had this game circled on their schedule. I mean, this is the toughest game that they'll play all year.
Yep.
So
To be fair, that 21 and 22 Georgia team, both of them had games like the Mississippi State game, like the Auburn game, where we should be winning by 50 and we're only winning by 28. So
yeah, I agree. I think it's more so the Mississippi State game. Auburn game I can live with.
correct.
Mississippi State has left a kind of a sour taste in my mouth.
Correct.
If I'm being honest with how we finished that game and how the defense, especially the secondary, played.
Yes. So
against the Mississippi State team who has looked not great.
Not great. So to any of the Georgia fans that end up watching this, please do not take this as we hate our team. Kirby Smart's awful.
No, far from it.
Please
Far
do
from
not
it.
take that. It's out of love. We just know that this is a big game for both teams, and we have not been in a situation where we have been the underdog in a while. So we're getting reacclimated to that.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I think the main thing here is that Kirby Smart has elevated this program to a level and set a standard so high. When it dips below that standard, it is glaringly obvious to the fan base.
Yes.
Because over the past couple of years, we have come to expect. There's been an expectation that we've come to know of this team, and right now that is not being met.
Yes.
So, not to say that that's sustainable. No. You know, it's hard, so hard to do that in college football. Yep. Obviously, Nick Saban was so good because he could maintain that level of execution and, you know, just the way that they played football. But even, you know, his best years, you know, the best they did was back-to-back. So,
I mean, to be fair, I'm looking into it right now, but what they did at Alabama for the Saban stretch was unprecedented. And even by those standards, a down season for Nick Saban was, once they won their first national championship, his worst season was 10 wins. So the dynasty was over in 2010. The dynasty was also over in 2013. The dynasty was also over in 2014. The dynasty was over in 2017. The dynasty was over in 2019. The dynasty was over in 2022. Like, you know, and I'm pretty sure some of those years I just read off, they may or may not have won a national championship. So,
yeah, I mean,
it's not
easy to sit here and say, if you don't win it every year, you're done, right?
Yeah.
So even if, you know, Georgia has 2 down years, you know, obviously as a fan, you don't want to see that. Things aren't over, but it just takes to a certain point in the season where, you know, not willing to really accept that as fact yet. A lot of football to be played, and I think this team has a lot of talent. Kirby Smart is obviously still a great football coach who could win games like this and get his guys up, motivated to win the games like this. So at the end of the day, I think they can win this game. It's just we need a complete game, and I think that's really all there is to it.
Correct. I'm good, Brandon.
Yeah. There you have it. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to win either of these games. Texas, Alabama. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. Long recording session, a bit scrambled, but anyways, if you made it up until this point in the video and you're watching on the podcast, we appreciate you hanging around with us, talking ball. Yeah. It's a pleasure. Thank you all as well for the continued support lately. We have been doing well, at least for our standards, so it's very encouraging. We love to talk ball. Boom. We love to have community engagement, you know.
Call us Stitch.
On the road to 1K. Yeah, man.
Call us Stitch because we 626, baby. Sorry, that was bad. That was so bad.
No, you're good.
But we're pushing an hour 40 right now. So if y'all have been around this long, thank y'all. Shut up. Let me check our freaking TikTok statistics because those have been going stupid. If y'all are here from the short form, welcome. For a second there, we had a race going on between TikTok and YouTube to see who we thought would reach 1,000 first, and TikTok is just taken off. We're chilling at 831. Thank y'all for that. We've had a couple that have kind of blown up a little bit, but
yeah, for sure.
Support on both platforms and Instagram as well. Can't overstate that. We really do appreciate it. It keeps us going. Because I'll be honest, without any, if I didn't see any uptick this year, I don't know if this would have continued on.
No, it's very encouraging, and we appreciate each and every one of you for watching the videos and engaging with them. Like we said, we love talking ball and trying to build a little community here. So, thank you for being a part of it. If you have or are considering, we appreciate it very much. But yeah, we're going to leave it there. Hopefully will be a great weekend of college football, some great matchups. We're looking forward to it. So we will see you in the next one.